from research in psychology, as well as just practical matters in the conducting of scientific experiments, is that one of the lowest forms of evidence you could possibly invoke is eyewitness testimony. Which is odd because it's one of the highest forms of evidence in the court of law, which disturbs me greatly. So if you come from a lab to a science conference and say, this is true, we say, how do you know this? Because I saw it. Well, that's really the end of your talk. And you just leave. And then we say, come back when you have a chart recorder, or you have to just give me something that does not have to flow through your senses. Because your senses is some of the worst data-taking devices that exist. And science did not achieve maturity, modern science did not achieve maturity until we had instruments that either extended our senses or replaced them. And Galileo, it's not an accident that we have modern science as I've described it, experiment, verification, these tactics, these methods and tools, began with Galileo and Francis Bacon, and Galileo was around 1600. That was the invention in that period of the microscope and the telescope. So it's not an accident that all this sort of came together at that time. So now we have people who are in the act of dying, and they come back from life, and they report on mental experiences. And that's intriguing. It's intriguing. But because it is in the realm of eyewitness testimony, you can establish it perhaps as a personal truth, but it will take more than that to establish it as an objective truth. And an objective truth is the kind of truths that science discovers. And it's the kind of truth that is true whether or not you believe in it, okay? It exists outside of your culture, your religion, your political affiliation. Personal truths, if I may consider that, would be, okay, Jesus is your Savior. That's your personal truth. You cannot convince someone else that Jesus is their Savior in an objective way. You have to persuade them. You have to persuade them in some cases by war, right? Look at the wars that have been fought between religions that did not agree about who was their respective saviors. Sure.
If I walked on water, made you unblind, created loaves and fishes out of nothing,
that would be amazing.
I think,
and we would investigate that, and we would say, "Whoa!" Yes, we would. It would be an amazing thing. And then if we cannot account for that by any other known laws of physics, and it's only happening with you, we'd wonder if you were like alien or something first, right? But no, it would be so easy to demonstrate divinity if in fact you had the power you wanted to display. But getting back to the gentleman's point, so part of this issue is, what does it mean to be dead? Okay, it used to be, did you fog a mirror that was held up in front of you while you were laying there on your bed, all right? And if you didn't fog the mirror, you were judged to be dead. They would put you in a coffin, and in some parts, it is told, there's a string that they put into the coffin as they buried you, and they put it over a tree branch and connected to a bell. If you woke up, you would pull the string, and that's where you get the term dead ringer, okay? You would pull the string, and you come rescue me because you buried a living person, okay? So, then it was you're dead because your heart stopped. Well, we know why a heart beats. It's electrochemical. So you do pa-chunk, the heart beats again. We got that one, okay? Well, is it when you're brain dead? Well, you can be brain dead, but your heart is still beating. And we can keep you alive. Are you dead yet? Well, no, because your heart's still beating. Is your brain functioning? No. Okay, I can tell you this, that if you're dead long enough so that your brain is deprived oxygen, and then we bring you back, you're not talking about seeing any lights because you're brain dead, okay? So, plus, this often happens to someone who is deathly ill to begin with, and where are they? They're in a hospital. And if they go into cardiac arrest or something critical, they take you from your hospital bed to an operating table. And what is sitting above an operating table? Lights. Bright lights. Okay? And so, if you say, oh, I was dead and I came back and I saw lights, maybe it's not all the cases, but it's many of the cases. Okay? Now, there were skeptics who tried to do an experiment. There are people who say they left their body, and they saw, we got some of those.
Montesquieu.
So here's what they did. When was Montesquieu?
He got rear-ended by some guy on a horse, fell off, flew up into the air, looked down at himself in agony, watched his wife come over.
Wait, they had rear-end collisions in the era of horses?
Montaigne, not
Still,
Montaigne.
they had rear-end collisions in the era of horses?
Well, you ride a horse where the guy behind you is riding too fast. It's like a cab situation.
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay. Okay. So, I didn't know that.
Well, I love stopping you mid-sentence.
Rear-end collision with the horses. Where was I? So there was an experiment. So there's some descriptions that are part of this near-death experience literature where they come above and they see themselves down there on the bed. Okay? So what they decided to do is for people who are about to die, they would write a message facing upwards to the ceiling above the bed and suspend it there. So if a person goes above their bed and looks down, they'd be able to read the message. So when they rejoin their body, they should then tell us what message they saw. That's never happened. It's just, no. That's a no. Now, I have a cousin who, when her father died, was alone with him in the room, and he's in an open casket. And she's otherwise completely rational, okay? I'm not saying this is a crazy person. She's a real estate agent, okay?
Speaks for itself.
Okay. Among other okay. So she's in there. She tells me of a conversation she had with her dead father. And I said, was it in your mind? No, he sat up and spoke to her. I said, what was the conversation? And she said, well, he said, don't worry about him, he's in a better place, this sort of thing. So, this is her eyewitness testimony. I'm not going to say it's wrong, I'm just saying it's not scientifically useful. That's all I'm really saying here, okay? I told her, next time this happens, ask these questions and not those questions, okay? Don't say, are you happy? No, say, are you wearing clothes? Where are you? Where did you get your clothes? What temperature is it? Just ask questions. Like, this is an amazing scientific experiment you could be performing. So that's my lesson to all of you, that if you find yourself in that situation, okay? Because if a dead person sits up and starts talking to me, oh my God, my iPhone is coming out, I'm getting chart recorders, I'm gonna be all up in that as an experimenter, okay?
Question is, can you help us understand a multi-dimensional universe? What would be the dimensions we are unaware of?
Any dimension higher than the 3 that we're familiar with, or the actual 4 that we're embedded in. We live in a 4-dimensional world. And that might sound a little flaky or freaky, but consider the following fact. You have never met someone at a place unless it was also at a time. And you have never met someone at a time unless it was also at a place. That requires 4 dimensions of coordinates.
Wait. What about in a dream?
Is the dream happening inside your head?
Yes. I don't know when.
So the only point is, we know intuitively that we need 4 dimensions to localize someone to meet up with them. Especially when, well, only 2 dimensions if you don't have tall buildings. You have tall buildings, you need the 3rd dimension. So you don't say, I'll meet you at the 20th floor of, on 721 Park Avenue. What time? Okay? There's a full 4 dimensions going on there. So I want to convince you we live in a 4-dimensional world. for that reason. Okay. It may be that these 4 dimensions are manifest to us, but that in fact we are embedded in a higher dimensional space. And string theorists on the frontier of this exercise are hypothesizing at least 10 dimensions to account for everything we see in the universe, even if we do not directly measure those dimensions themselves. Now, with your permission, may I go on a dimensional journey with you? May I? Might take you on a journey?
A dimensional odyssey.
Odyssey. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Are we ready? Just get ready for this. Okay. So, I'm at my desk, and the desk is a surface, okay? And I start putting pages down on the desk. I'm tiling them on the desk. And then I run out of room. I have exhausted the 2 dimensions of the surface of my desk. We have ways of accommodating this problem. And so we have page organizers that go upwards. So now when I don't have any more surface area of the desk, I can enter a 3rd dimension and put pages there. If you are an ant embedded in this 2-dimensional world of the surface of my desk, and you fill up the desk with these sheets of paper, the ant will say, "There is no more room." And I say, "Yes, there is. Watch me." And I take a piece of paper off the desk, put it in the page organizer, and according to the ant that's embedded in the 2 dimensions, that page disappeared. It disappeared into a dimension that ant does not have access to. What a brilliant invention this is. You can put practically an unlimited number of pages, far more pages above the desk than on the desk. So access to a 3rd dimension is an extraordinarily useful storage device for a 2-dimensional creature.
Does the ant trust you that what it cannot see is nevertheless there?
You have to then talk to it about this extra dimension. And then it will have to just trust you.
Yes.
Because watch what happens next. I now have my 3-dimensional room, and I'm filling it with boxes. Now I've run out of space to put the boxes. But now a 4-dimensional alien looks at us and says, "I got this. Just move it into the 4th dimension." What are you talking about? And the alien comes in, reaches in, takes one of the boxes, and then the box disappears. Disappears. It went into a 4th dimension. And this was captured in the film Monsters, Inc. Did you guys see this film? These are monsters that work in a door factory, and they make these doors, and they open the door, and it is the door of a kid's bedroom or their closet. And they step through, and they're in the kid's closet. And then they scare the kid, because that's their job. They're monsters. Okay? This doorway is a portal through the 4th dimension and then back to the 3rd. So imagine a new storage system where you just go to Home Depot and buy a door. And that door is your portal to a 4th dimension. You open the door, put your boxes, close the door, you look on the other side of the door, there's nothing there. So this is what's going on when you have access to higher dimensions.
Wait. Don't you have to then talk to somebody? Because as far as you know, if you're a scientist and you need data, what you have is something that you had, it's gone, and now a voice says, "I've got this."
Yeah, if
that data?
If it's a voice from the 4th dimension, I'm going to listen to it.
So does every dimension
I'm not going to say,
come
"No,
with a
you're lying."
narrator?
If there's a voice coming out of the 4th dimension and makes one of my boxes disappear, I'm thinking it's got more power than I do and more knowledge of the space-time continuum. So I'm going with it.
Now, does that mean that in order for a scientist to credit another dimension with real existence, it will need a testifier from beyond? So you need a dimension plus a dimension voice?
Yeah, a dimensionless voice. Yeah, that comes from another place. Now, there are things that happen in quantum physics that kind of defy our sensibilities. Like particles pop in and out of existence. They defy any rational attempt to understand it. Particles can be entangled with one another. A particle can be here, and there's a barrier, and it can spontaneously show up on the other side of the barrier at faster than the speed of light. All of this is just mysterious. Let me ask you, suppose you have a sphere, and I live in a two-dimensional world, and you take this hollow sphere, so it's a shell, and you pass that sphere through my two-dimensional universe. How will I describe that? I will say, this point just appeared out of nowhere. Oops, now it's a circle, a small circle. And that circle's getting bigger by the moment. Oh my gosh, it reached a maximum size. Now that circle is just shrinking. It's shrinking. Now it's a point. Now the whole thing disappeared. This would be completely freaky to a two-dimensional being. But it makes complete sense if you live in 3 dimensions and you pass a sphere through my universe. So, who is to say that some of the mysterious things we are describing accurately, but don't otherwise make sense in a higher dimension? And these are just the manifestations of higher dimensional phenomena in our world. And that's an aspect of what these higher dimensional physicists are trying to establish.
At this point...
Now I want to totally blow their minds, if I can.
Oh, sure.
If I may. But you got to stay with me on this, okay? We're all Upper East Siders, so you got this. You ready? Okay.
These are not all Upper East Side. There are suspiciously un-Upper East Side people littering the room.
Okay. But you got to stay with me, okay? A point has no dimensions. There's no height, width, depth, so it has 0 dimensions. A line has 1 dimension, length, okay? A square has 2 dimensions, sort of height and width. A cube has 3 dimensions, height, width, depth. We got this. Now follow me. A line is 1-dimensional, but it's bounded by 2 0-dimensional things. Those are the points. 1 dimension bounded by 2 0-dimensional points. A square is 2 dimensions bounded by 4 1-dimensional sides. A cube is 3 dimensions bounded by 6 2-dimensional sides. So in other words, the dimensions of your sides are going up. Your line is bound by 0-dimensional points. Your square is bound by 2-dimensional lines. I mean, by 1-dimensional sides. The cube is bound by 2-dimensional squares. Okay? So we're going up 2, 4, 6. 2 points, 4 sides of a square, 6 sides of a cube. And each side is 1 dimension less. They're squares on the sides of a cube. They're lines on the side of a square. They're dots on the sides of a line. Let's go up to a 4-dimensional cube. A 4-dimensional cube has 8 sides. A regular cube had 6 sides. We're going up by 2. A 4-dimensional cube has 8 sides. And each of those sides is a 3-dimensional cube. 1 dimension down from itself. in the same way each side of a three-dimensional cube is a two-dimensional square. So when you get to 4 dimensions, the sides are three-dimensional surfaces. And you can take this all the way up. And our brains can't picture what we call a hypercube, in some circles a tesseract. We can't picture a volume bounded by three-dimensional cubes. What does it even mean? This is because we evolved in the plains of Africa, just not wanting to get eaten by a lion. Our neurosynapses are ill-equipped to do the distance on this. And this is why we invent mathematics that can take us there.
Well, the mathematics can help us imagine it, but if we want to credit it with reality, then you have to design an experiment that somehow touches your own world.
Yes, yes. So you can invent something that you can't see if it has testable consequences in ways that you can see. That's perfectly allowed. Not a problem. Mm-hmm. Oh, and by the way, there's some people that say you cannot prove a negative. Some people like coming after. Generally, you won't hear a scientist say that. Mm-hmm. It's others, like philosophers and people who like criticizing scientists, but who are not scientists. They'll say you can't prove a negative. We kind of do that all the time, okay? But we don't use the word proof. We demonstrate without any further discussion that the negative is true, okay? So here's an example. There's a cave there. Is there a bear in the cave? I don't know. I'm not going in to find out, okay? I'm going to set up cameras and see if a bear comes out, okay? So I set up the cameras all throughout summer, no bear goes in and out. But then I take down the camera. Maybe a bear went in there to hibernate. So here's what you do. You set up powder outside of the cave, something that will record a footprint. And you just monitor this month after month after month after month. Do it for 12 months. Look up in the charts how often a bear has to eat and how long it would take a bear to die for not eating. If the period of time you waited is long enough so that there are no footprints, you conclude that there is no bear in that cave. I just demonstrated a negative sufficient enough for me to no longer pose that question and go on to another problem. But if you are so distracted that it's not a formal proof of a negative, then you could just keep sitting there wondering while the rest of us decode the nature of the universe.
We have, for the last bear in the cave, I guess, let's see.
Oh, by the way, maybe the cave is not a closed cave.
It might have a rear door.
It might have a back door.
Yeah.
Okay, that's possible. I suppose that's possible. So then the assumption that there's no bear in the cave would be wrong. But
Or the cave could have a cave, and that cave could have another cave. You see, there's just so much to worry about.
Right, and so you will sit there, arrested by your own capacity to doubt an experimental reality.
Yes.
While, like I said, the rest of us go and keep making discoveries.
Well,
yes.
we have time for one more question. If you're in your career as a scientist, if there is one question that you wish to address, what would that science question be?
Yeah, okay, so I'm going to give an answer, but then I want your permission to give you a kind of a cop-out answer. So I'll give both, a full answer and then a cop-out answer. My full answer is, I wonder if, in fact, the human intellect is sufficient to actually decode the full operations of this universe in which we live. Ah. And it's not specifically an astrophysical question, it's just more, we are an intelligent species because we defined ourselves that way. We don't have the benefit of another species to compare ourselves with, against whom we might fail miserably. And so when we compare ourselves to chimps, we sit up righteously and say, we have poetry and the Hubble telescope and philosophy, and the chimp just stacks boxes to reach a banana. Yet there's only 1% difference in our DNA. But then you'll say, what a difference that 1% makes. And I would say maybe that 1% DNA difference corresponds with an equally small difference in the intelligence between a chimp and humans. And you say, I can't believe that. No. Well, imagine some other species that visits us that's 1% along on that same scale, smarter than us. Consider, the smartest chimp does what our toddlers can do. And there's no way you will explain to a chimp, I'll have dinner ready at 6:30, can you pick up some juice on the way home? The simplest human thoughts are inconceivable to a chimp. And their talents are about what our toddlers can do. So let's get back to this 1% smarter alien that we've discovered. Corresponding this analogy, we now say, what would we look like to them? Well, they would roll Stephen Hawking forward after combing the human species, and they'd say, this one is slightly smarter than the rest because he can do astrophysics calculations in his head like little Timmy over here, who just came home from preschool. Oh, Timmy, you just composed 3 sonnets. Isn't that cute? Let's put it up on the refrigerator door. Oh, you just derived the fundamental law of calculus. Isn't that cute? Put it up on the refrigerator. Their simplest thoughts would transcend our deepest thoughts. And maybe to them, it is obvious what dark matter is and dark energy. Maybe to them, particles popping in and out of existence is a trivial exercise in their understanding of the multidimensional space-time continuum. And we are here groping at the sides of a wall, not knowing how tall, wide, or deep it is, because we have the limits of the human physiology evolved off the plains of Africa just to try to understand the entire universe. So I lose sleep on that question each night. So that's my...
Wait, did you almost say at the beginning of that answer that you are wondering, maybe something of a Mysterian, that you're not sure?
I'm not sure.
The universe is so complicated that it may be more complicated than we can ever fathom.
No, that's the hubristic way to say it.
Oh.
That's not how I said it, okay?
How did you say it again?
We might not be smart enough, okay? If you're hubristic, you would say, we are smart, but the universe is just really complicated. That's not what I said. Right. I said we might not be smart enough to figure out a universe that could be trivial to the brain of a more intelligent species.
Okay.
So check your hubris at the door. Otherwise, you will not bask in the cosmic perspective that so much of this discussion brings upon us. So, may I now give you my cop-out answer? My cop-out answer is, I think often about the questions we do not yet know to ask because discoveries yet to come, but when they arrive, will put us in a new vista, a new place to stand, enabling us to see questions undreamt of and unimagined before we got there. So when I, again, lay awake at night, I ponder what kinds of questions lay beyond our reach. Because the questions that we even know how to pose, they're there. Those are not even interesting to me anymore because we knew how to ask the question. I want to know the question that is beyond everyone's reach. And by definition, I can't because we haven't gotten there yet. But that doesn't mean I shouldn't dream of that frontier. And
that sounded like a coda to me, I gotta say. Like I could hear the orchestra playing through.
May I offer a better coda?
Yes. and then we'll let you go. But I
Yeah, we went here long. Sorry, we went long. Try not to ever forget that the history of this exercise, this beautiful exercise where we find out where we fit in this great unfolding of cosmic events and phenomena, that the larger grows the area of knowledge. Okay? The bigger that area grows, just remember, so too grows our perimeter of ignorance. It may be that as much as we think we know, as much as we know, as much as the more things that we ultimately learn, for all we know, we could be steeped in the center of infinite ignorance, which then provides job security forever for scientists, right? Robert Krulwich.
Neil Tyson.